You've heard the term, right? Growth hacking? It's everywhere. So today, on The Explainer, we're going to slice right through all that buzz and figure out what it actually is.
So is it just a bunch of sneaky online tricks, or is there something, more substantial going on? Let's tackle that head on.
Okay, this slide really gets to the heart of the matter. On one side, you've got the myth. It's all about quick hits, copying others, this secret bag of tricks. But the reality? It's the total opposite. Our source material paints a really different picture. It's a systematic, data-driven engine, and its whole purpose, its entire focus, is on one thing and one thing only: relentlessly finding ways to give your customers more value.
All right, to really get our heads around this, we're going to break it all down into 5 key parts.
First up, let's go back to the beginning. Where did this whole growth hacking thing even come from?
Well, here's the fun part. The term growth hacking was itself a growth hack. How meta is that? Back in 2010, this guy Sean Ellis came up with it, and he did it on purpose to be a little controversial, to get people's attention, make them react, and then, boom, show them the results.
Okay, so if it's this whole process, this system, who's actually in charge? Who's driving the bus here? Right, so it's not some lone wolf genius in a dark room. A real growth team is the small, cross-functional crew. You've got a growth lead, kind of like the captain of the ship. You need an engineer to actually build the tests, a marketer who knows the channels, and a data analyst to make sense of all the numbers. And this is key. You pull in people from product, sales, support, because the goal is to break down those classic company silos and get everyone pointing in the exact same direction.
And that brings us to the kind of person who thrives on a team like this. They're often called T-shaped professionals, and it's a great visual, right? Think of the letter T. The horizontal bar at the top, that's their broad knowledge. They know a little bit about a lot of things: psychology, data, design, conversion optimization. But then you have the vertical bar, the stem of the T. That's their deep, deep expertise in one or two specific areas, like, say, SEO or building viral loops.
All right, so we have the team. Now, what map are they using to navigate? That would be the customer journey.
And a really famous framework for this is called the ARRR funnel. Yep, you heard that right. It's called pirate metrics because, when you say it out loud, it's kind of silly, but it's super useful. It breaks down that whole customer path into 5 really critical stages: getting them in the door, making sure they have a great first experience, keeping them around, making money, and then getting them to tell their friends.
But here is the absolute game changer, the big insight. You have to stop thinking of this as a funnel where people just fall out the bottom. It's not a one-way street. It's a loop. That last step, referral, feeds right back into the first step, acquisition. A happy customer literally brings you the next one. It's a cycle that can power itself.
Okay, so how do you even see what's happening on this map? Well, you need 2 different kinds of tools. On one hand, you have your aggregate analytics. Think Google Analytics. It tells you how many people did something. 1,000 people landed on our page. Great. But then you have behavioral analytics. This stuff tells you who did what. It gives you the story. It says, okay, of those 1,000 people, 50 were first-time visitors from Canada who scrolled all the way down, hovered over the buy button, but then left. See the difference? That's where the real insights are hiding.
So we've got the map and the measurement tools. Now let's talk about the engine. What actually drives this whole thing forward?
Every good engine needs a compass, right? A direction. And for a growth team, that compass is the North Star metric, or NSM. It is the single most important number, the one metric that best shows you're delivering on the core promise, the core value of your product. And its purpose is just crystal clear focus for everyone in the company. And you can see how this works with some big names. Take Airbnb. What's the core value they provide? A place to stay. So their North Star metric is nights booked. Makes sense. For Zillow, it's all about finding a home. So they track homes searched. For Geico, it's policies purchased. See the pattern? The metric is always tied directly to the customer successfully getting what they came for.
And the actual process for improving that metric? It's really nothing fancier than the scientific method you learned in school, just applied to business. You look at the data to find an opportunity. You come up with a hypothesis, an idea for how to make things better. You prioritize which ideas to try first, and then you test it. It's a loop. Analyze, hypothesize, prioritize, test. Over and over and over. The whole game is about discipline and speed.
Now that prioritize step is super important, because how do you decide what to test? You want to avoid the hippo problem. That's the highest paid person's opinion. You know when the boss just says, do this, and everyone scrambles? To get around that, teams use simple frameworks like ICE. You score every idea on 3 things: its potential impact, your confidence it'll work, and the ease of implementing it. It takes the guesswork and the politics out of it and lets the best ideas, not the loudest voices, win. Okay, so you've got the team, the process, the metrics. How do you make this stick? How do you build a whole culture around it?
Well, the benefits of getting this right are massive. Our source points out that when you do this, you see way less internal politics because everyone's aligned on that North Star metric. There's no more arguing about whose project is more important. And because you're testing all the time, your speed of innovation just goes through the roof. You're learning faster than everyone else.
So, what's the #1 thing you need? The absolute non-negotiable requirement to make a growth culture successful? It's CEO buy-in. Simple as that. This whole thing has to be championed from the very top. The leadership has to be the one saying, yes, let's experiment. Yes, let's follow the data. And, this is huge, they have to be okay with tests that fail, because that's just part of learning.
And naturally, there are plenty of ways to trip up. A lot of the common pitfalls really boil down to losing that discipline. Things like testing random ideas that aren't tied to your main goal, or just blindly copying what your competitors are doing. Another big one is focusing on the act of doing tests instead of the goal of learning from tests. It's a subtle but really important difference.
So that brings us to our final thought for today. If you strip away all the buzzwords, the heart of growth hacking is really just applying the scientific method with discipline to deliver value. So my question for you is, how could you use that same mindset, that loop of testing, learning, and focusing on what truly matters, to solve problems in other parts of your work or even your life?